Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to Adventure Built. My name is Kelly.
I'm Trevor.
And it is early. It is 6 in the morning and we are doing another build on Trev's 4Runner.
Yep. Got up super early, about 3:30 this morning to drive 2 hours.
Way too early.
Way too early. But we do it for you.
And we've got something super special from RDJ Trucks, so stay tuned. So bro, I know you've been having some issues with your truck. What's going on?
So one of the main issues that I'm having, especially when it just comes to the fender flares, is that the factory ones with my spacers and tires are outside the fenders and I'm getting rocks kicked up and it's actually hitting the side of the vehicle. You know, I have my Victory 4x4 Blitz side steps, which I thought were going to protect anything flying up. However, still getting rock chips on the side. These guys are going to be a little wider to help keep all that stuff inside the wheel well.
Protection's a good thing.
Yep. Never have too much. What I got was the RDJ Trucks Pro Extend with the textured rhino skin coating on here. The reason that I went with these is that it kind of maintains a factory look with the smooth contours instead of the pocket style with the bolts. I kind of just prefer that look, and especially since those exposed ones, they're just cosmetic anyway. They're not bolting into the body. The other reason why I went with the textured rhino skin is durability. In Arizona and a lot of places, you know, when you're off-roading, you get a ton of pinstriping. So with this, it's essentially a truck bed coating from them already applied on here. And it will keep all the scratches and everything down. It's pretty tough so far, but I can't wait to test it out in the bush.
It's a real nice texture and it just has a good feel to it. I really like this.
Yeah, and they have other options. Like I said, they do have the Pro Off-Road, which is the pocket style, and that's gonna have the bolts going along there if you know you prefer that style. There's also just a flat paintable plastic. There's an aggressive textured plastic. And then there's the Rhino Skin Smooth, which is similar but more smooth. I think it may show scratches a little bit more, so I went with the textured, but we'll see. And then they also have a painted option. Well, they'll paint it to match colors, but with that option, you're gonna be paying a lot of money. So, you know, it's all style.
It is all style. Yep. Or lack thereof in some cases. True. All right, that's enough talk. Let's get these on the 4Runner. Step number one is going to be giving all the surfaces you're gonna be working around a good cleaning. You wanna make sure that everything is dirt-free, rock-free, so you don't scratch your paint. No one wants that.
Step two is removing all the factory bolts and clips that are inside the fender well and to make room for the dry fit. There's 7 of them with a 10mm, and then any clips for mud flaps or anything like that. My mud flaps are already removed. However, I still put the clips in there just to keep mud out of them. The next step for us is more of a pro tip than anything else, and it's dry fitting the fender up there. On the front fenders, it will actually fit over the factory fender, so you don't need to remove it. And there's gonna be some drilling on the top, 2 holes on the top, and then 1 on the bottom. The other factory holes should match up. So we're trying to line that up and then make sure that there's no fitment issues with where I cut on the fender, on the front of the fender for tire rub issues, and then in the back rubbing on the rock slider. Make sure, because there's no rubber seal on here, that you're not pushing too hard against the paint and scratching the paint as well. We're putting the factory screws in just to hold it in place so we can see how it fits, and that way we can draw lines for cutting or anything like that. We've identified 2 spots, one in the front on the inside where the tire may rub it. So we're just gonna go ahead and trim that off. And then in the back where it's impacting on the step a little bit. With the spot marked, now it's time to get to some cutting. You want to be careful because it is a coating on here, so you don't want to cut it and then it peel all of that truck bed liner off. That would be really bad, especially on something that's just on the inside of the fender flare. So it doesn't have to be a clean cut or anything like that, but you don't want to mess up everything else.
And it's a lot thicker,
Body saw.
I guess.
We switched to the body saw because the utility knife just wasn't cutting it. Yeah. That's so funny.
Here at Adventure Built, we always test out the gear that we use. So I grabbed a rock and I'm just gonna scratch. No, I'm not gonna scratch my brand new fender. However, the pieces that we cut off, I'm just gonna use a little test sample. Any truck bed liner will scratch. If any company tells you otherwise, they're lying to you. It's expected that they're gonna scratch. But what I really wanted to know is how they look once it's scratched. With the texture on there, you can barely notice the scratches in the surface. So not too bad. Are you gonna be scraping up against rocks? Maybe, but it's gonna scrape on anything. It hides it really well. Test complete. Step 5 is to install the rubber gasket. This thing has a 3M double-sided tape on the back, and you want to pull a little bit off and gradually work your way along the outside edge, and it will stick on the inside of the fender, and that holds it in place. Minutes later and it's on. What I've noticed is that it's easy to pinch, have your finger spread open the seal, push it on with the other finger and put about a couple inches on, and then peel the double-sided tape out from underneath it, go back and press it on, and then continue that through the whole way. It's a slow, tedious process, but it's got good adhesion and it's very form-fitting. Before the final install, I'm gonna put some bolts back that aren't drilled out on the fender. So we pulled them out just to make sure that we have clearance for the dry fit, but now we're gonna put them back in there to hold the inner fender together. The RDJ fender flare is held in by 8 bolts. However, 4 of them are from the factory. You have underneath, 1 on the front, 1 on the rear, then 1 in the middle of the 2 front and back, and then you have to drill 2 on the top as well. We're going to install the 4 factory bolts first and then mark holes for drilling.
We've got the 4 factory mounts in where the aftermarket fenders attach to the factory wheel well. Now we have 4 other holes we have to drill. 2 up the very top here and 1 on each end. I'm gonna use a 9/64 drill bit to start the pilots, and then I'm gonna use 5/16, which they recommend for the aftermarket hardware that's gonna go in these holes. After drilling the pilot holes, I'm pretty confident that I can drill these out without having to remove the aftermarket fender. So I'm actually gonna switch over to the 5/16 bit and just drill the holes now. Too easy. The hardware that they include for this is going to be these little push clips with a Phillips head into it. Put it into the hole, and it's a pretty positive click. It kind of clicks in a little bit. And then take your Phillips head screwdriver and just screw them all the way in.
Everything fit on here pretty well. However, there's about a 1/2 inch gap back here, and we just went ahead and tightened it in, pulled it in, and it doesn't seem to cause any issues or anything. We'll see long-term review later. The front fender hole is the same 5/16 drill bit. However, it's using different hardware. It's using stainless steel hardware that's provided, and you're gonna need a 5mm Allen and a 13mm wrench. Make sure the washer fluid bottle's right under this too.
Wow, right into it.
Yep. Like, oh man.
Front's done, moving to the rear. The rear portion of this installment is gonna be a little bit more involved. The first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna remove all the factory screws and the rear mudguard.
To remove all the bolts in the rear, there's 6 10mm bolts, and then there are 4 clips. Nope, 3 clips.
Change of plan. You actually don't need to remove the mudguard. We did. Come to find out, you don't have to. The RDJ fender flare just goes right over it. Very clean.
With this install, the only piece that you actually need to remove from the factory fender is this section right here. So we removed the 2 screws. Now we're gonna pull it off, and hopefully I don't break it because I don't like breaking things. Ha! Oh boy. All right. I definitely broke it. Right there.
Oh shit.
A lot of dirt gets trapped under these fenders. So just clean it up, start from scratch so we can put new dirt under there later. Just like the front, we're putting the edge trimming on the back. However, there's no real need to do any of the cutting on this. We'll actually cut them in place. The only issue that we're going to have is on the door fender that is going to extend down and actually run into the rock slider step.
As much as I like watching my little brother struggle, I couldn't let him sit there and do 12 minutes of installing the rubber gasket. We have a 2-person method that we used, 1 person kind of opening up the gap and putting it on the edge, and the other person kind of falling behind, pressing it down firmly and pulling the 3M and making sure everything's seated nice and flush.
It's younger brother.
Little brother.
The rear section of the fender is going to go on fairly easy because there is no trimming or anything necessary. Nothing's going to get in the way of this one. The little notch here goes into the divot, and then you just line up the factory holes on the bottom. And pushing in on the fender a little bit will help just get you lined up on that hole.
We have all the screws and clips installed in the rear. If you look at this seam here, this is a really nice fit. I'm actually really surprised at how easily this is coming together. All we have left is to drill the hole to the rear and install a sweet little clippy thing.
You want to make sure to pull the fender down and have it snugged up against the body lines as close as possible. Hold it in place and then just go ahead and drill it. You could use a pilot hole, but honestly, with the hole being there, it's very easy.
Ah, messed it up.
Oh my God. You take your clip, insert it into the hole, and then grab your screwdriver. We're now on to the most complicated part of the install, the door. It's already notched here to go directly over the fender, so you'll see the end piece here, and it goes around and you actually screw directly into the door. However, because of the rock slider, we actually have to notch the bottom out so the door will close. And it comes down and it matches the body lines very nicely. However, with the slider, it's not going to work. So your application will vary. Ours, we have to do a good amount of chopping. We're going to start at the corner and do as little as possible, and if worst case, we'll just cut the whole bottom portion off. This really is a two-person job to make sure everything's lined up before you start marking. So make sure it's flush here, it's along the door sill, and everything's good. And now we'll just start closing it and drawing and cutting.
There's cut one.
All marked up, ready for the first cut. Remember, always go small. You can always cut more and more, but you can't add more plastic on. So close. So I went on the inside of the line just to give us more space, but it's near perfect. So I'm gonna go on the outside of the line, and that should give us the clearance that we need. Third cut's a charm. Second one, so close, but just took a little bit more off the top for clearance. Good to go. That's a nice sized chunk that we took out of there, but I have big steps. One thing to note is the plastic on the door is thicker than the other fenders. And I am assuming that is because this one actually opens and closes with the door, so it's got to be a little bit more robust with that motion, where the other ones are just stationary. Now that the dry fit is complete, we're going to clean it up using just Windex, get it all clean, and then we're going to use an adhesion promoter from 3M to help the double-sided tape stick to this door, because again, with a lot of opening and closing, especially with an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old, these things are going to get some abuse. We're going to use a Scotch-Brite pad on an air tool just to clean up the edge, make it look nice, because kind of can see it, but not really. But you know, we like things to look good and functional around here. A little change when lining it up. Initially, we thought the cutout was to go over, so you'll see the entire end, but we actually dropped it inside just because it was sticking out a little too far and it made it not look so good. So I dropped it down. We still have plenty of gap, and it just gives it a better alignment and more flush appearance. Dry fit complete, all cleaned up. Let's get it installed. On the back side, there's a whole bunch of little 3M pieces. But before we pull these off, we're gonna hit up where it's gonna come in contact with the body with this 3M adhesion promoter. That should hold it really well. And then there's gonna be 2 screws that go in through the bottom that hold it on as well.
Oh my God.
I think I'm high already. Like a glove. Stuff is potent. It's very stinky. It kind of smells like rubber cement. So I would use a glove for this. And we're just gonna essentially wipe it on the fender and then on the top. With the adhesion promoter on, now we're gonna strip this off and stick it on. Ready?
Yeah, just do your side first and then I'll just work my way down. apply pressure to it.
Huh?
They say apply pressure. So the directions call for 30 psi across the entire panel. So we're just putting 100 psi into it, because why not?
Now we have to sit here for an hour.
Ugh. Siri, order pizza. Would you like to make a bet if it's plastic or metal, Trevor?
No, I would not. Because every time I make a wager with you, I lose. But every time we just talk and I'm like, oh, I know I'm right on this. And you're like, no, you're wrong. And I'm right. But when we wager, I always lose. I don't know why.
Can you say specifically when that's ever happened?
All the time. According to the instructions, it is actually optional to drill in these 2 screws. I disagree. If you're going to be doing any kind of off-roading or anything else like that, it is highly recommended that you go ahead and install the 2 screws. Yes, it is going through the plastic and possibly into the weather seal. However, you don't want just the tape holding it on. I like mechanical fasteners. 1/8 drill bit, and make sure that you're going slow and steady with this to not go too far into the weather seal. I am going to hit it up with some silicone afterwards just to seal it up and prevent rusting. That was all plastic.
So you're saying
And
I was right.
No, I would never say that you were right.
And just so you know, I know my brother well enough. That look on his face said that I was right.
Never.
I was right.
Got a little RTV in black. That way, seal it up, make sure no water gets inside there. We got the screws in. They're not coming through the rubber gasket, which is good, but you can definitely feel them in there, so it may add some additional wear to that gasket through time. However, I did notice this corner right here. Now, I've got 2 young boys. They're right about this height for catching it. Going to just cut it and sand it down, so that way it's just a little bit safer and don't have to worry about them catching it and either ripping the whole fender off or cutting themselves.
That wraps up the RDJ fender flare install. I thought it went pretty well.
Yeah, it was actually a lot easier. You read online a lot of horror stories of people installing fender flares, and I can kind of understand where they come from with, you know, the misalignments and stuff, because fender flares are going to be hard. With that, I thought it went pretty easy. I mean,
the good thing is they're plastic, so they're pliable. They really kind of, they do what you want them to do.
Yeah, it will conform to the shape of the vehicle. I mean, as long as you're putting it generally close, it should be okay.
Yeah.
I think the thing that was like the biggest pain in the butt out of the whole process is just putting the rubber seal around.
My finger still hurt from that.
I know that's tedious work right there.
At least it didn't go in every single piece.
Yeah.
Oh wait, it did.
It did. Other than that, I thought it was really good. It was really nice quality. I like the texture.
Yeah.
They're solid. They're on there.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah,
cool. Win-win.
Happy.
Right on. Well, guys, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you guys next time. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, ADV_built, and be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time.